Good morning, PD. You're listening to Live and Local Mornings for Florence and the PD on Live 95.
Welcome back to Good Morning PD Live 95. Takes Mondays to make Fridays. Today's show brought to you by Spherion. One of the most interesting stories this week has nothing to do with Donald Trump, but in some essence, or in some way, shape, or form, it does have to do with Donald Trump. Mark Zuckerberg will testify. I guess he'll be hauled before Congress. Not his thing. He's not crazy about doing this, but I don't think he's being compelled to do it. I think he's coming as a willing participant. I would imagine he'll apologize. But the question is this.
Is he really sorry?
Well, I mean, I read something. I found the article this morning. I actually read it Thursday or Friday of last week. Facebook has figured out a way to surveillance. It's called surveillance capitalism. I mean, in essence, there was a lot of interest amongst investors when Facebook went public. And the curiosity was, how did they make this? How do they monetize this huge user base they have? 2.2 billion people around the world. We got, 325 million people in America. I saw yesterday Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, announced he's off Facebook. He just says, I probably am not concerned about my personal information. It's kind of the moral of the subject. I just don't want to be a part of a company that is a part of a business that's called surveillance capitalism. In other words, they're treating your personal information as a product of which to monetize.
It's their product.
It's their product.
Yep.
And you've agreed. Here's what I found more interesting than anything. We know the story. We know the narrative. We don't go into great detail because we don't know the details yet. Cambridge Analytica. There was a little bit yesterday on the talk shows. Before I went to church, I was watching some of that. So there's some of this he said, she said. Did Obama utilize the same sorts of principles and formulas to become geniuses in contacting and luring voters to their side? And did Trump manipulate, in a wicked and evil way, the same sorts of information, micro-targeting, and, they find out your messages and there's certain code words that initiate some sort of electronic response. We did a little bit of that in my lieutenant governor's race, not to the extent that presidential campaigns, and plus that was 8 years ago, and we've come a long way since then. I mean, there's a lot more availability of personal information on Facebook today. But Zuckerberg, it's a big day in his life. I mean, I really believe that. I believe it's a big, big day in his life because you're dealing with I look at Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. as kind of the power centers of America today. I mean, it's not the Rust Belt where the auto manufacturing is not. I mean, there was a day the manufacturing part of our economy was the creme de la creme. And it was where everybody went to find out who was in charge. I mean, where are the powerful people, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts. That's, you've seen the series, The Men Who Built America. Well, now we've got this element that probably has more influence and more money than anybody in America, any private sector division in America, that being the tech industries. And you've got, Rev, I would argue that you've got a fundamental rub. You've got Silicon Valley, which is based upon what? Entrepreneurship, visionary aspects. Nobody really knows exactly what they do. We kind of romance about these T-shirt wearing, hoodie wearing, entrepreneurs who start in the basement of their mom's home or in the father-in-law's garage. And out of that comes a multi-million-dollar company that is sold publicly. And the founder is the consummate entrepreneur and he becomes a billionaire. That's kind of the story of Zuckerberg and Jobs and Gates and all these other people. And then you've got this element in Washington that is very legalistic. It's very traditional. It's A and then B and then C and then D, and that's the way we do things in Washington. I'm very curious and interested in the interaction Zuckerberg has. Now, there's one thing Zuckerberg has to his advantage, and I want to kind of set the table a little bit. I have no idea if Zuckerberg wears a suit or a T-shirt and a hoodie. It's just interesting to me to see the contrast in what is normal in Silicon Valley and what is normal in Washington, D.C. Nobody in Washington wears a T-shirt and a hoodie. I mean, you're kind of scoffed at and laughed at, and I would advise Zuckerberg to put on a nice suit. He's got enough money in the bank to go buy him a nice suit and show up, with a Senate subcommittee in the traditional fashion, because once again, he's not inviting Congress to Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. When you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do.
He's in their world.
He's in their world, a very legalistic sort of world. But my interesting, I don't know, the perplexity I think that exists that very few people know about. The Wall Street Journal did an article Saturday morning. 85% of the people that will ask Zuckerberg questions have accepted political campaign contributions from Facebook. Facebook will lead you to believe they're this non-interested, entrepreneurial spirit-driven, tech company out in Silicon Valley. Harvard dropout, wears T-shirts, doesn't like giving interviews. He's a bit of a awkward. He's not real. He's awkward in social circles. He's not the typical CEO. But I'll tell you what they were. They were savvy enough to give 85% of the people who will be asking the questions probably Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And some have accepted up to $27,000, $29,000, $31,000, $11,550. There's a political action committee that a couple of these members are a part of, or they're not a part of, because you can't be associated with a PAC, but we know exactly who the PAC is defending and who they're supporting. And Zuckerberg has been very involved, or his company has. I don't know if he personally does this or not, but Facebook has been very politically active in supporting certain political candidates. So, my question would be, how does the committee deal with Zuckerberg on something they don't really understand? I would argue very few members of that subcommittee understand what I'll call surveillance capitalism. The fact that there's a company in America today that knew they had a product that everybody loved. For whatever reason, we like putting the pictures of the meals we're about to eat so other people can see it. I don't get it. I've never done it. For the life of me, I don't understand the Americans' appetite for that. But, hey, it is what it is. I got me a new pair of shoes. Here's a picture of my new pair of shoes. I put them on Facebook, and people disrupt their days long enough to say, I like. For the life of me, I don't get that. That's foreign to me, but apparently I'm in the minority, because 2.2 billion people around the world are users of Facebook. I looked at some statistics last night, Reb. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable the cumulative time we spend as the American public on Facebook. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I should have prepared better and had those numbers, but I don't. But it is unbelievable how much time we as an American public spend with our heads buried in a computer showing people what shoes we bought or what meal we're about to eat or, what our kids are doing. And other people, take the time to like and comment on that. But Zuckerberg could leave Washington as a damaged good. I believe there's going to be a civil action suit. I believe there's going to be a group of Facebook users who take legal action against them monetizing your private information. Now, it'll be contract law, because when you agree to become a participant in the world of Facebook, if you read the fine print, you read the language of the contract, they have the authority to do this. But contracts are contracts. I mean, that's why we have lawyers and all, I don't know how many lawyers we got in America. We got a bunch of them. And if contracts were contracts, contract law would be very easy. There's an expectation. There's a good fair trade practice. There's all these other components that get into contract law. And just because it's written in the contract that I have a right to divulge your personal information doesn't remove you from any potential lawsuits and litigations. There is litigation coming, and I'll be very interested at some of the questions. In fact, I'll be interested enough that I'll find a way to get in front of a television when he appears before the committee, because I just want to hear some of the back and forth. And a lot of people will be oblivious to, Zuckerberg's not a creature of Washington. There he is with the suit. He looks uncomfortable. Poor old Mark Zuckerberg. Poor old Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, they drug him to Washington, kicking and screaming. All he was a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, who caught lightning in a bottle, and out of that came $1 billion payday for Mark Zuckerberg. Well, he's smart enough, or his company's smart enough, to have donated to 85% of the members of Congress who will be asking questions of him at some point later this week.